We promise to be lively to keep you awake. We're going to be talking about cable's technology roadmap. I'm Craig Letty. I'm your moderator for today. I run an outfit called Interactive TV Works, do a lot of writing about cable and digital media, and teach some courses about that. And 3 weeks ago, the cable industry gathered at its annual cable show. How many of you were there? Okay. So when we've been going to cable shows in recent years, there's been a lot of focus on cable's struggles with innovation. And this year, there were actually a lot of signs that cable is being a lot more innovative with its advanced video platform by embracing things like TV everywhere, tablets and other devices, other connected devices, cloud-based interactive program guides, HTML5, hybrid gateways that combine set-top and modem functionality together. And the industry even is now embracing smart automation, so you can check your thermostat from afar, and joining together in Wi-Fi hotspots. So a lot of signs of progress, but at the same time, there are still many that would argue that the cable technology platform is yesterday's news, that it is outdated, that we can't innovate quickly enough, that we're stuck with legacy equipment, that we're a closed environment that is unwilling to change. So for cable, is the glass half full or is it half empty? To answer that burning question, we have some great panelists here, and I'm going to just have them, before they answer it, just go down the line and briefly introduce yourselves, your name, your title, your company, and just tell us sort of what you've been focusing on, say, since the beginning of the year. Frank, why don't you just begin, and we'll just take a run right down.
Hello, everybody. Is this on? Can you hear me? Okay, great. So I'm joined Comcast last summer as part of a new group called Platform Architecture, which is really to, I think, it's an attempt by this gigantic organization to start, modernizing infrastructure, start looking at the cable plant and related infrastructure, really take a platform view, much the way like Facebook would think of itself as a platform play that also is a product on top of it. So, it's sort of just a modernization exercise, I think, and hopefully I'm a symptom of good things to come.
I'm Charles Stuckey from Cisco. I run a business unit that's called IP Video Systems, and I build a thing that we call Videoscape. We launched Videoscape at CES a year and a half ago, and this last year we showed that we were ready to begin really selling it. And it's a platform that starts with the ingestion of content, packaging it, and content distribution in terms of media management, and its applications, content management, and a platform for other kinds of apps that we call Conductor. And that whole thing makes up Videoscape, and companies can buy the whole thing, and since the beginning of the year, we have customers buying the whole thing to launch an IPTV service, and we are also selling components where people may be buying just an element of it to launch a brand new service for TV Anywhere, looking ahead to time shift TV, cloud DVR, interactive advertising, and companion are kind of the things that are driving the thoughts on what we're building. So I run engineering and product management, and our customers are cable and telco companies, so we're trying to help them modernize.
Cool. I'm Don Dolcinos. I'm SVP of Advertising and Interactive Services at Cable Labs, industry R&D consortium for the 5 people who are not cable guys in here. I've been working on advertising and interactive technology, interactive services, EBIF based, if you know that technology, advanced advertising, including interactive ads, ad insertion into VOD and other, and kind of migrating that into an ad insertion architecture that works in this new IP world and multi-screen world, and how does that all fit together. More recently, been working on other parts of the emerging parts of the cable bundle, so home security and other kinds of automation, sensor-based services that cable companies might get into, or already into in some cases. And then in my spare time, I'm on loan to an organization called the Entertainment ID Registry, which is a universal global identifier for movies, TV assets. That's very helpful in sort of orienting people in this new world of multiple entertainment products ending up on multiple devices over here, and how do you keep track of which asset is where. So that's a consortium of Cable Labs, Movie Labs, Comcast, and Rovi, and I'm serving as the executive director of that group.
I'm Jeff Miller. Is this on? Yeah. I'm Jeff Miller from CEO of Active Video Networks. And we make a platform called Cloud TV, which is a cloud-based application platform targeted for video, for service providers and connected devices. And what Cloud TV does is basically unchain the user experience from the device and move the entire user experience into the cloud. And that's what we focus on, the advantage of doing this. You heard Craig a moment ago talking about how the cable industry for a long time has been stifled in terms of innovation by their deployment of set-top boxes and devices in the home, which have limited capability. By moving the user experience into the cloud onto our HTML5 browser, which is essentially running in remote servers, we're able to bring all of those legacy boxes and any new connected devices into the world of HTML5 and next-generation user experiences, basically modernizing the cable user experience without having to replace a lot of deployed capital. So that's what our company does, and that's what we've been doing since the beginning of time and the beginning of the year.
Hi there, I'm Adrian Fowkes. I'm CTO for Strategy and Technology. We're a worldwide company with branches in America and England, and we make carousel generation equipment. So we provide a lot of the infrastructure for true two-way and common download and ETV within the stream. So we're kind of the plumbing guys.
Adrian is fresh from the Queen's Jubilee.
I'm nearly dry.
Okay, so I started off by posing the question, is the glass half full or half empty for cable? Is the industry getting more innovative? Or is it even able to get more innovative? I mean, how would you characterize the status of the cable technology platform at this point in that regard? I'll let you steal my mic.
I guess I'll start a little bit. So, nobody's really a fan of these deployed legacy receivers. They're pretty terrible. But, it's not really a technology issue. It's really a financing issue. There's just no way to really replace those easily. So, so there's various sort of workaround strategies, second screen, advanced set-top boxes. Maybe in 3 or 4 years, it'll be all on streaming devices or smart TVs. But, that limiter will eventually, slowly but surely erode as other platforms sort of go around it one way or the other. I don't think that that's going to mean that the cable provider is, his role is still going to stay the same. It's just the technology to deliver that basic service and package will just, it'll just take place on different platforms.
70, 80% full, I think. Okay, no, I can just do that. Okay. I'm reminded of the author William Gibson, the cyberpunk science fiction author, who said, the future's already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And I was thinking about that when Tony Werner was going through their latest new features for the X1 platform, which is not widely deployed yet, but it is out there and it is fairly cutting edge, and it does a lot of cool stuff with customer engagement and usability. And it'll take time for that to migrate into the kind of historical systems of cable, but it's there. And then we're starting to be kind of creative with that legacy platform to emulate innovative stuff, even if you're not using perhaps IP to deliver something. I've got some experience on the EBIF side, so that's a sort of a legacy platform is designed to fit on the lowest end set-top boxes and support some kind of interactive applications That's still out there. It's widely deployed, but now, starting with Comcast and other companies are leveraging that capability in the box, which helps drive what the box can do, channel change and volume, whatever else it is. But out in the cloud, do much more interesting things and then download to that client in the box. So leverage what you've already got there, but to do the new stuff. And the challenge there, I think, always is then trying to tie together that set of capabilities that vary across your system, but have the same customer experience, or try to approach that.
I would have to say that I certainly think that the cable glass is half full. Even though there's been a lot said and written about the decline and that connected devices are going to take over and all of that, I'd have to say that where we stand today is you've got the vast majority of televisions are cable connected. People are already watching them, so there's that inertia. They have most of the best content contracts in place, and those are already being streamed to the TV. And they have many initiatives which are designed to pull the user experience into the 21st century as well. So they certainly have the pole position. That doesn't mean that they'll win the race, but I think they're in a position with the installed base and the content contracts to certainly take advantage of it. And I think you see that anyone who was at the cable show would have seen a lot of interesting things showing up on the TV. Cable has begun to embrace the cloud, to move much more intelligence into the cloud instead of in the box, which has saddled them in the past. So I'd have to say that where they stand today, the glass is half full, and if they continue filling it, they'll reach the top.
But is the movement to embrace multi-screen and connected devices and all that, is that good for the cable business, for the cable business bottom line? And we are all drinking the multi-screen connected device Kool-Aid here, but even at the cable show there was sort of an undercurrent of, well, what are we doing and why are we really doing this? What's sort of the business game plan? I think, Don, you even were part of that undercurrent. What are your thoughts on that?
That's not a career-furthering attitude to take. Let me just, for the record, say that I'm wholeheartedly in support of every screen that's out there. It's just the best thing you can do. All right, so let's turn this around a little bit. Let's do a survey. How many of you in the room, do we have that thing, have a second screen open right now? Okay. How many of you, keep your hands up if you do, how many of you have that TV Plus app going that has our bios and shows what's going on in this panel? Okay. And then so back up, how many of you are doing email?
Just
right. So
playing video games.
If you're, for those of you who are doing the TV Plus app, there's a great advertising opportunity that's happening, and that's a business impacting thing, and that'd be cool. Those of you who are doing your email, you're not really adding anything to the cable experience and to the bottom line of the revenue. So, don't call it skepticism, but I think there is empirical issues yet to be determined about how customers are using these things and how that is affecting. And then that needs to cycle back into how cable supports them, and then present and what you present on them. And do you present new kinds of experiences on those devices rather than just reproduce, the existing linear TV and just have it show up on a different thing, right?
And I think it can be very, very good for them for a variety of reasons. We talked about the cloud liberates the pace of application development and lets experiences that are delivered by a cable company or any other way tap into innovation of the web and of other things that are going on that drive Silicon Valley and drive the media industry. So they're able to tap into that better if they're using the cloud than if they're having to develop a lot. So that's great. But what's held a lot of it back, as we said, is the set-top box. They're deployed as a financial issue. They're hard. They're never going to keep up as fast as you guys upgrade your iPads and your iPhones, right? So that is moving very quickly. But if that navigation device, the device you use to find and relate to your content, and for those who want to make money, your advertising and commerce, moves to that other device, then you sort of are able to keep pace with how fast technology is moving on the second screen. And what we're in love with is Game of Thrones and NBA basketball and whatever, Dancing with the Stars, whatever you like, on the big screen. And they still have, as you said, those relationships to deliver that very compelling content on large screens, but match the pace of innovation on the smaller screen. So there are some empirical issues. How will people embrace them? How will they how much do they want them in sync? Most of us use our iPad while we're watching TV, but the question, do we want someone to sync that for us, is an open question. But the existence of that second screen to find, curate, navigate, and then for the media companies to promote, the cable companies can and will, I believe, embrace that. And so I think it's good for them. It makes the user more passionate in their TV experience.
Well, Frank, you're a cloud guy now. You've always lived in the clouds, and you have much cooler socks than mine. That's what really upsets me.
George Bush socks.
So how X1 is primarily all about program navigation right now, but where does it evolve out? What are we going to see down the road? Does it become a platform for lots of apps, or what's the long-term game plan?
I think, code words are kind of hard to figure out sometimes. I think, X1 is there's different aspects to that platform. One is new encapsulation, delivery, and transport protocols for video. So instead of on QAM, it can be QAM or an IP channel end-to-end. Just changing the video pathway doesn't necessarily change anything else. But there is a new approach to the presentation layer. So generally HTML5 based. That's probably a future for many categories of devices in the future. However, there'll still be sort of native iOS and native Android apps as well. So X1 is sort of going in multiple directions at one time. One is solving presentation issues for advanced receivers, but also laying the groundwork for a much more flexible content delivery or video pipeline that can then service all kinds of different devices.
So, but as all of you have acknowledged, before we sort of get to that all IP world, we're still dealing with those legacy set tops and that sort of thing, and we've been trying to get EBIF and True Two-Way out there to sort of resolve some of those issues. Adrian, that's really been your province. So how do EBIF and True Two-Way sort of play in this roadmap now and going into the all IP world?
Well, I think over the past year we've seen the demise of GNU, and I think that's had an effect on what applications you can show with EBIF. But it continues to roll out and be deployed on more and more set-top boxes, and I think it will probably evolve to provide infrastructure rather than stuff in front of the customer. So it will still be there, but its role will change from being a presentation engine to an infrastructure engine.
Jeff, how about you? You've had to sort of balance those two worlds as well.
Yeah, well, a little self-serving to say this, but if the set-top box is simply a video decoder, and you put all of the intelligence in the cloud, then there's nothing you can't do on a legacy box that you can do on a new box. So, I think the more intelligence you place in the cloud, the more you can do with what you have out there and anything you might have in the future, and the simpler it all becomes for developing and deploying new things. The goal, I think, and actually, as you see this happening even in the connected device world, the theory was always that a connected device, the new TVs and Blu-ray players and other things out there would all end up having some universal browser that would run everything that you ever want to do, and that somehow that would solve all of the problems. And what you find out when you talk to companies like Netflix and others who've actually lived in this world a few years is they now support 700 different clients when you try to reach all of those devices. So I think in the long run, embracing cloud technologies more and more, and in-home technologies less and less, and make those devices as simple as possible. Basically a telephone, plug it in and you can get voicemail or anything you want, and you never have to change your phone. Same kind of concept for video is possible, and I think the plumbing and electrical have to be there. And so the EBIF and OCAP and other technologies have to be there to support this, because there are a lot of things that still have to happen in the home, like emergency alert system response and the ability to do things like that, overlays on live video. So the perfect platform is one which has the capability in the device, which needs to be there, and the capability in the cloud to do the more advanced features.
Can I pick up on just the sort of the infrastructure idea? I kind of like the way Adrian put it. It's there, and it's something that Mike LaJoy at Time Warner had said. You know, the signaling part of ETV, the EISS portion, has a lot of legs. There's a lot you can do with it, and so that, you know, IP remote kinds of things, the ways you bridge from the cloud to what's in the home, that's pretty cool, and it's got that. But the other side, we shouldn't neglect that the platform part of it is also still kind of got some legs too. And you know, on the advertising side, Canoe's not doing interactive ads, but the MSOs are. I mean, certainly all the major MSOs are doing interactive ads based on EBIF technology. You know, thousands of ad campaigns, millions of impressions, and so that's got some ways to go and some revenue to generate. And it's also, as an application platform, kind of interesting that I've got a couple of creative people, Debbie Fitzgerald and Carrie Sensino, in the audience here, who've been playing with the platform in terms of extending it and bridging new technologies into it. And so they had come up with, for example, an augmented reality application. Show of hands, everybody know what augmented reality is? This is TV of tomorrow, right? Sort of. So, you know, it's more of a mobile thing at this point, but a handheld, you put your phone up, and based on your location, it draws information, and you can pull up images that have been created and tied to that location. And so they came up with an app that kind of uses that, but pulls information off the TV. And then the thing was this graphic of you're in a furniture advertisement, and you want to buy that couch, but you want to know how it looks in this room, and so you can actually pull up a 3D model of that, and then you use an iPad to place it on the stage here and see how it looks and whether you want to buy it. So again, leveraging what is very, very simple technology to bridge into a much more complicated technology. So you know, wouldn't write off almost any of the legacy at this point. There's some legs there.
Cover 310 and see the demo.
And by the way, there's a whole panel on what's still going on with EBIF at 310, 315.
Shameless plug from Cable Labs. So some of my thoughts on that is I used to develop video games, and you know, as a game publisher, you have to make bets on different platforms. You can't possibly support all of them. Some will live and die. Some will become world conquerors. So you just have to be smart on where you invest. So there's never going to be some sort of unified presentation environment. You'll never, you know, there's not an answer to what's better, client or server. You know, whatever makes sense at the time. You know, Apple's done very well on an application platform that is not cloud-based. So the cloud is not, you know, cloud in our situation can solve some very legitimate problems. But it's not, there'll never be one answer to that. So there's, you know, questions about the presentation environment and how do you deliver the user interface. But just as critical as we were talking about, it's really, you know, what are the resources that are available to program for the logic that's not inherently bound up in the presentation of the pixels. You know, there's a lot of work need to be done to be able to synchronize across screens, to be able to offer, you know, come out with a feature that you can spread out across your web page, your companion app, your mobile app, all your different TV environments, all at once. And so, you know, there's a lot more to this than just the presentation environment.
Well, there's a lot of interest in HTML5. Does that become the new presentation environment? And to what extent is cable embracing HTML5?
Well, I'm a huge fan of HTML5. It's very powerful with sort of the canvas construct, so you can do a lot of interesting things, drawing pixels to the screen. But again, there will never be in a world where there's just one environment, you know, one presentation environment. That's just not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I think HTML5 is going to be good until HTML6 comes out.
It's one of the things that we've seen in the UK and in Europe, that when somebody goes to HTML instead of, you know, fairly obscure programming languages, you suddenly open up the development community to a much wider range of developers, and that just encourages creativity and produces better apps, I think.
Yeah, and the HTML5 definitely gives a rallying point, because there are way too many environments. But as you said, we're going to still have iOS, still going to have Android. But again, if the innovation can focus on fewer platforms, then we get the effect of the of the community, the ecosystem driving the innovation. So HTML5 is going to play a big role. And that can be locally rendered, cloud rendered, or mixed. So it has a big role.
So just so everybody knows, I mean, the standardization of HTML5 is still kind of congealing, and cable companies have done a lot, and cable apps is supporting them in defining what's in that platform. So it does support the kinds of services both that we do now and that we think we're going to be doing in the fairly near future before 6 comes along. So it's fairly much of a consensus direction, I think. It's fair to say.
TV personalization has always been a big theme here at TVOT. Depending how you define TV personalization, but are we through various cable, the cloud and all these other efforts, are we moving to a more personalized television experience via cable?
I think so, definitely. I mean, with the companion app, that's a much easier, more natural way to personalize. I think on the TV set, until you have, real innovation environment on the user interface, we haven't been able to explore different ideas. But, it's conceivable that, say, if you build up a playlist online or on a mobile app, and now you want to play that back on your TV, well, the TV, may have to have a little widget where you can select, okay, well, I'm the persona now watching the TV, so I can get to my playlist. So I think that stuff will naturally, evolve. And then, to me, it's all about, I'm sort of, go back to this word of platform. We need a platform to innovate on. And so, once you have the software components in place, then we can start, do Facebook-y type things or tie into Twitter. I mean, all that stuff becomes very straightforward. And so we'll see people trying everything.
Don, you're involved in some of these efforts, right?
Well, I mean, Cable Labs has some activities, and maybe it'd be helpful to look at the lines of investigation here. I think Frank kind of laid out the why and what you want to do with it. How you get there is sort of one of the issues. And so one of the things we've done is some initial thoughts on who's the person who's viewing the television or the video at this time, right? So cable is moving from a household as customer to an individual, and what do they want? So one thing you want to do is know who's in the room. So by the same token, you don't want every customer, every time they pick up the remote, to have to log in and say, oh, it's me, it's not my wife, or whoever it is. So is there automated ways to do presence detection? And so we've looked at and are looking at a range of technologies that do that, like a Bluetooth connection. So can you assume that everybody has their cell phone when they're in the family room watching TV, and if so, they could just automatically be recognized it's their phone. But then, there's other phones in the house, and what we found is the range of that technology doesn't necessarily work, that you might pick up somebody who's in a different room, and all of a sudden it thinks you're your wife, but you're not. And so there's Wi-Fi technology, there's RFID, there's different ways to skin that. Facial and voice recognition are possibilities. Although it's interesting that, I think it was the natural, what was the panel? It was natural user interface stuff, gestures and everything. That
You have to be naked for that.
yeah, well, there's kind of a
Oh, natural. Yeah.
So this is therefore a really, so thanks, Craig. It's like you can get really creepy about this too. But, yeah. Okay, hello, Don. I know you're watching me, and I know you're naked. Yeah, so Cable Labs is not doing any of that, and nor will we ever do that. So anyway, so presence detection is one of the things, and then once you do that, okay, now it knows it's me watching, and it's gathering the information what I'm watching, and then feeds that into a profile over time that you can then feed into something like a recommendation engine. And now I have a much richer set of data for that engine to generate new choices for me to watch. So that kind of customer profile is another kind of research chunk of this that could happen. Recommendations themselves, and Comcast is out. Actually, several of the MSOs are out there now with working with individual vendors of recommendation engines and seeing how that works. But there's a sense that there's some usefulness of an API around recommendations that, where does the data come from to populate that? And it's not just your personal history viewing, but other databases. And so how do you reach out to those? IMD, the Internet Movie Database, or something like that, and how does that get fed in? So that gets into this metadata issue. And so this other entertainment identifier registry that I work on is yet another way for customers to find, or for the technology to find on an automated basis, okay, here's a movie, and it's got a unique identifier, so I know what it is, but it's got this set of metadata around it, what genre it's in, what the actors are, and you can kind of go through a chain of connections to find even richer data to populate your recommendations. But you still want some kind of traffic cop, so you can, I'm still thinking about the same movie, and it's still thinking about me as the same user, and orchestrating that. So there's a big, I call it metadata challenge to all that, and that's still going to take a while to sort out.
I was just going to say, I agree with that. The behavior that I'm interested in watching is how people curate the content they want delivered to them. So it's curate's this word that's been overused for the last 6 months, but I'm going to use it anyway. Which is, a lot of you set rules on your DVR. I only keep 5 shows because if I keep 15, then it bumps something else off. And you curate your playlist on iTunes or whatever else you use. But as soon as you go to multi-device, then you're sort of going to increasingly get into this habit of setting up rules and behaviors to how to manage it. So I think ends up inevitably being personalized because I've curated, okay, these are the shows that I want to watch. I'd like those, not only stored here, but dribbled over my now not unlimited LTE connection to my Verizon phone overnight, so that those are ready for me when I'm on the airplane and I can't get it. And so you'll create these rules. Now, because whether it's client server or pure cloud, either way, that data has to be registered in the cloud. And I think we're all using these other devices much more comfortable, sort of programming how we all want this to work. But then sort of drop dead simple to have that be my program versus someone else in my household. So I think it's just inevitably part of how we're going to consume content.
Okay. We want to hear your questions in just a minute, so if you can get those ready. But I know that one of the questions always here among all the developers that come to TVOT, it's always, well, how do I get my stuff on cable? That's the bottom line. Now, it's viewed as this closed environment where, I'm going to have to, make this app or whatever it is, and I'm going to have to go to the tall tower there in Philadelphia and go up and buy Frank a new pair of socks and, bow down to him for a while. And, and then I'm going to take another meeting 6 months later. And maybe someday my app will see the light of day, or maybe Comcast will just build it itself. But so I'm just saying.
Is there a question in there?
Is there a question? Exactly. So what are we going to do? How are we going to embrace innovation from all these sorts of folks?
Yeah, well, I was a software developer for many, many years, beginning my career. So from my perspective, we need an SDK that has rules engines in it, so you can apply for authentication to access different resources, and it does a good emulation environment, so your application is going to work. And so we don't really have any of those tools, even for our own development. And then another aspect is, like I mentioned at the beginning, we're trying to modernize, like many companies, and wrap all of our infrastructure in nice, clean APIs so we can do something with all this data and resources. Once you've done that, then it's possible to maybe syndicate those to third parties, much like Amazon, Facebook, and everybody else in the world is doing. So that's probably part of the story. I mean, when and what APIs will be released. I have no control over that. But personally, I'm advocating, we need an SDK, we need APIs. We're not going to build every app ourselves. I think people understand. That's pretty obvious, really. I think. So it's just a matter of sort of getting there. Getting unglued from our past history and sort of modernizing and evolving.
Other thoughts?
I was going to say the fact that there's so much over-the-top television means that there's, of course, a rich area to develop these applications and prove that they work. And as you've seen with, say, take HBO Go, then the innovations can come to the cable industry without having to be tightly built in at first, and then they can be built in. So because you have these platforms and open APIs, but more importantly, because you have sort of the rest of the media and TV industry, I think we're going to see a much more rapid, much more fluid adoption between the over-the-top world and the cable world.
Yeah, I was going to make the same point. We had a discussion today in a kind of a tech group that there's often a requirement at the beginning is, okay, whatever we're doing here to this new thing, it's got to support legacy, right? And so I'm increasingly hearing that said in the advertising space, one of the places where this happens, that you have to not only, now we're going to try to do ad insertion into IP devices. Okay, we have to preserve the legacy, or at least all the features you have in that, the VOD environment, the linear environment. But now you have to have, now we think about it, you have to have parity with the digital world. And so we're in the digital world already. A lot of things that happen with advertising that you can't do on cable today, we got to get, it's that forward-looking parity. And so if you're doing the innovation out there, it gets noticed, and it's driving what's happening within the companies.
Adrian and Jeff, do you see a way in for third-party innovators?
Definitely. What I would say first is that a lot of what had prevented third parties from getting into the cable world before was that first of all, the set-top box population was very limited, so it was very difficult to get in. And then there's also a learned culture at cable that you don't ever want to do anything that breaks the TV experience for the viewer. The last thing you want to do is have a viewer click on an interactive ad and the Super Bowl disappears. So the barrier to get in was not just business; it was also technical, because the QA cycles on testing applications before they got deployed was very, very high to ensure that you don't break anything. And so now that cable, though, is moving out of that world and into the browser-based world, whether the browser is running in a box or running in a cloud, it certainly will lower the barrier, because if the TV experience, the linear live TV experience, is completely decoupled from the interactive application experience, at least then there's no way you're going to get 1 million calls on the day of the Super Bowl because your new interactive app broke the box. Of course, going one step further than that, run them in the cloud, and there is absolutely zero chance you will break the box. And so, the idea behind the cloud platform is to allow people to develop HTML5 applications and never touch a set-top box. In fact, you run it in Chrome browser on your laptop, and if it works, you can deploy it and guaranteed you're never going to break the box. So I think that also lowers the barrier to getting third parties onto the cable platform.
I think now that second screen applications are getting deployed, I'm not sure we'll ever see a situation where people queue up to try and get their own EBIF applications onto the first screen. I think that's just been too difficult, and I think people may always just aim for the second screen now.
Okay, questions from the audience? Do we have a mic for
I got a big enough voice.
All right, just yell.
Yeah, the pool
I'll
of money
repeat it.
called carriage, that is the foundation of the cable franchises, sort of reaching its peak at $100, $110 range. To the point that some of the new nets coming online probably won't be able to tap into those funds. How does cable, maybe more of the technology discussion, but how does cable, and seeing these new OTT entrants, worry about distribution, given retransmissions there and all the other stuff? Are there going to be new tiers, new structures? How does the billing side work? You talk about transport, but the economic side is going to start having to open up in some way. How does cable respond to that?
New tiers of OTT providers?
USC programming that wants to get on cable on the Xbox platform that's not carriage-based.
Yeah, I mean,
That isn't using the original cable model. Is that
The
outside?
revenue stream, the second revenue stream is pretty full. The price point that consumers are willing to pay for the basic tier is reaching a price elasticity point.
Yes.
How else do you innovate more on the business side? What are the implications for your building systems, things like that? Not just transport, but the business side.
yeah, I'm very curious about that myself. Actually, cable's very expensive. I mean, yeah, it is for me. And I think that over time there may be some, real price pressure put on the basic proposition. I'm not the business guy, can't speak for that, but speculating from a software point of view, if you're delivering things through atomic applications, well, those applications can theoretically do kind of anything. They can just go to a web server and you can just watch a show from a web server. I mean, technically. So so with that kind of possibility, does that introduce new business models? I think conceivably. Will the basic business model evolve over time? I think every business model does, right? I mean, no business just stays static forever and ever and ever. But I mean, there's obviously a reluctance. It's been a very tried and true model for everybody in the ecosystem for a long time. But I would imagine that over time, things will evolve. A lot of times people say, "Oh, it's what the customer wants." I've never believed in that illusion whatsoever. It's what the economics will support. And so we'll see where it goes.
So, so I was thinking about that at the cable show a couple of weeks ago, where I've been going to those shows for years, and they used to be more fun. And they were more fun because there were more channels trying to sell into the market, right, to get their channel carried. And, now you go to that, and I can't, I used to be able to go and get MacGyver's autograph, right? I mean, it was such a great thing. The entertainment value was great, but that model in some ways I don't think know if it's necessarily because of the price of the elasticity so much as the ability of a customer to navigate more than a couple of hundred channels and the limitations of the conventional guides today, and the concept of a network itself, right? So now, in my household, I've got the cable guide and I've got the hundreds of channels there. I've got a video on demand menu that is another way to search that. And then because I'm a TiVo subscriber, I also have the TiVo guide, and that gets me access to Netflix, and there's a whole other source of programming. Is Netflix a channel? Does it get carriage? It's not. It's a different way to aggregate some, overlapping kinds of content. So it opens up this whole, I think, a topic we haven't talked much about, which is the user interface and navigation, and how you're going to navigate through all that, because there's more content than ever, but the idea of discrete channels, maybe it has reached its maximum.
But your idea of a UI is a controller that has buttons on one side, then you turn it over on the other side, and it has a keyboard. And I looked at it, and the first time I saw it was at Sony. And then I looked at the one from LG, and I come out of the games business. And the easiest one was the one from LG, which was a motion controller, where I use my wife as a standard. That's a bad standard, but I use my wife as a standard for somebody who can pick something up and navigate their way through it. And there's nothing that makes navigation easy for any of these devices.
Well, the belief is that people will are going to use the device they already know how to use.
But you're writing for techies for techies.
No, I mean, they're going to use their iPad and their iPhone. They know nothing new to learn. That you know how to operate those and type on those. I mean, that's the standard we're working to.
Right.
By the way, my answer, Tom, on that one, I would like to know the answer to your question. But I will say, of all the things we talked about, when I look at the most powerful influence on this industry, it's premium content still. It's the Game of Thrones, and the ones who can draw the huge audiences that make people switch how they're paying for what. So that's around the world. It's major soccer leagues and football. We saw with what football did for satellite. But the race to get one of those, the premium value of one of those that cause people to change what they'll pay for, I think just keeps climbing up because we're sort of flooded on the long tail.
New premium generation.
Question here.
I'm just curious what the group thinks about the TiVo PayPal announcement. That's sort of an example of kind of that holy grail, if it reaches scale, obviously. But what does the group think? Is that a threat, something to emulate, a fad? I mean, what are your thoughts on that in terms of like the potential, how you could apply that to the cable model once everyone chooses their, infrastructure du jour to actually use all this interactivity and create new revenue streams, as you were saying, that are to be determined?
Well, I mean, I'm very bullish on so-called T-commerce, and I think that there's probably money there. I think, again, we've been challenged on how do you get, a very simple user interface in front of people. Again, this is another good example where there's the presentation issues. You can easily do that sort of spreading it across screens. Like you could have something on screen that says, okay, to purchase, go pick up your iPad, or you could maybe do the whole UI on the TV. The UI will move to different screens as it makes sense. Then part of it is just on the infrastructure part. So PayPal is just one of many possible payment instruments. You could, whether the business guys want to do this or not, certainly you could put it on your cable bill, and give a credit card to the cable industry, have them do it. If you already have PayPal, use PayPal. You want to use your Comcast Awards points. So there's a concept of an e-wallet, so you have different payment instruments. PayPal certainly could be one. But that's
not for
even
me.
just the payment flow is just one set of messages that have, one sort of part of the sort of Swiss clock that has to sort of work behind this. You have to have, fulfillment services, and then you have to have subscriber preferences. What's their preferred email, for instance, to get stuff. So there's sort of a, there's a set of APIs that an MSO would have to have, wrapping their internal systems, and then probably some partnerships would help to sort of, plug into those APIs. Then you can get your user interface on whatever devices you want, and then you could do commerce.
You asked that question like it was about TiVo, but there's also a Comcast PayPal partnership that was announced, right? So yeah, I mean it's.
The only thing I would add to that is that the killer app on TV is still TV. So I think adding T-commerce and using PayPal as a transaction engine is a good idea. But I still think what people mainly want to do on TV is find and consume content. And if PayPal becomes a great way of paying for that content, an easy way of doing that, then I think that's a great thing. For commerce that is television-based, like HSN, Home Shopping Network, and where you're actually buying, but it's still video, I think those are good apps. But I think the one thing, the connected device thing, is sort of showing everybody that the number one app is Netflix, and maybe number two is Hulu or something like that. But then there's a big fall off when you get down to any one of the thousands of other apps that are available, because they're not really TV. They're other things.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think let the consumer decide. I mean, 5 years ago, it was possible to say, "Oh, phone is a phone. I don't need to access the weather on my phone. That's silly." But now it's like the iPhone sort of proved that, oh yeah, people can use this. I think a TV is just going to be a gigantic iPad in the future, right? And if all you want to do is use it for TV, fine. Nobody's going to make you do other stuff. But if I want to do all this other stuff on the biggest screen I have, then I'll do it.
Other questions here? All right, I'm going to ask, this is a Tracy question, but it's a good one. Only Tracy can come up with this. Which technologies are currently overlooked but will have a surprisingly significant impact on cable's future? It's one of those sort of mystical crystal ball sort of questions.
Avoid eye contact.
I'm
Go
really
ahead.
fascinated by holography. I think holographic displays will be awesome.
I hope you're right.
And jetpacks.
That's pretty futuristic, though.
I'm not sure whether we're ever going to get to 4K.
4K?
The high definition.
Oh, okay.
Not with the over 50s anyway.
So one that we've been thinking about that isn't really widely thought of as a cable thing is sort of machine-to-machine communication, devices that communicate in sort of internet addressable devices. So sensor networks that could drive in-home businesses for cable. That's a technology area that's interesting. Rogers in Canada, which is both the cable company and the wireless company, I think it's more of the wireless part is a little bit bigger. They're out of the gate with a service that manages sensor networks on a sort of managed network kind of idea that cable companies are sort of good at. But both their wireless and their wireline capabilities to then turn that around to service providers. So if you are a healthcare organization and you want to monitor sensors in the home of somebody's health, you can kind of automate all that, and then it's a kind of a complex network problem that cable's probably good at managing. So hasn't been on the radar, I don't think, before.
We have a few more minutes. I just want to get back to this question of the economics of the cable industry, because I think it's interesting. The fees that cable operators are paying for programming, they just continue to escalate. Glenn Britt, the head of Time Warner Cable, has declared that broadband is their anchor service now, not cable television. So is cable television on its own still a good business? Let's just qualify the traditional QAM-based MPEG-2 sort of cable television business that we're in right now, or must it evolve?
Yeah, my view is that if they want to be in the content delivery business, they have to be in the business, as I said, of helping you, for a predictable price, curate a very rich set of television viewing experiences. And I think that's what they do, but with DVRs it's gotten richer. I think that's where I have to go. Otherwise they're delivering capacity, which is a profitable business. And I think it's one of the things to watch, which way are different service providers leaning, more towards being a curator of content or more towards being pure network. But in some ways a little bit in conflict with each other.
A pure connectivity network. Right. Other thoughts on that?
I don't know, I'm kind of a television guy. I think it's, that it's interesting for Glenn to say that. I'm not sure that he just means, he's well aware that, the old dumb pipe argument that you don't want to go there either, right? And so I think maybe the way to think about it is, emphasizing your network business, but as an intelligent network that has a lot of features that content management, curation, I love to use the word curate too. It's beautiful, yeah. Wait, I also love ACR. We haven't said ACR.
Let's hope it's
so I'll just
dead
say
by
ACR.
next year.
ACR is good too. Yeah, so it's that intelligent use of the networks. I don't think you kind of go, we're just going to sell higher and higher bandwidth speeds and then we're done and that's our business. It's more complicated than that.
Okay. We just have a couple more minutes. I don't want to ask one of those, predict what's going to happen in 3 years sort of thing. But I do also always like to leave the audience with a few things to be watching over the course of the next year, some key technologies that they should keep an eye on, or some milestones that they should watch for over the course of the next year. And please, read the trades and keep up on all this stuff for your own educational benefit. Can we just go down the line and talk about some things you think will be
I think
hot buttons?
Yeah, from my perspective, the sort of the inflection point we're at right now is that the user interface is going to spread everywhere, and one form of the service will be available everywhere, and that'll just keep evolving. And but to really empower that is really getting organized on sort of what infrastructure empowers those user experiences. And so as internally companies get more rationalized around how they create APIs, then there'll be an opportunity to start exposing those to other people, and then the branding and the presentation of certain aspects of the cable experience can then bleed outside of our own controlled universe, if that makes sense to anybody. So I guess, so as an example, maybe is something that, say NBC has an application on a iPad, and they maybe want to set a recording on the cable, on your cable box, right? Well, if we create an API that let their app do that, then that would be cool. Then you're sort of blending of our infrastructure and bleeding outside of our UI and being enabled by somebody else's.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, one of the topics I'm fascinated by is the latent value of spoiled ad inventory. So once ads have been sitting around for a few days, they're worthless according to Nielsen Media. When it gets replayed as a VOD or it gets replayed in a different location because you took it on another device, without having to charge anybody more money, there is probably, and I was talking to some analysts in San Diego this week about doing some calculation around it. What is the latent value of sort of highly underutilized ad inventory? And then when we throw commerce opportunities on top of that, that would increase it further. So I think there's some fuel left for this fire that hasn't been tapped into.
So I joke that VOD is where ads go to die.
Right, so they replace a Pepsi ad with a tanning service. You're like, that's probably not the highest use of that ad space, right? So.
Maybe one of the things, and ACR has been a big topic at this conference, and I think what will be interesting over the next 6 to 12 months is to watch how that technology gets absorbed into cable. I think a lot of the premise of at least the early companies in that space was about going around cable, being over the top to solve limitations of cable. It'll be interesting to see how cable adapts to those technologies and maybe absorbs some of them and uses them.
I think an interesting question for the next 2 or 3 years would be whether a company like Apple or Google ever succeed in obtaining content rights and streaming content directly over the internet pipe to a connected TV and bypassing cable altogether. That would be, if I think those two companies have the wherewithal to try to make that happen, and it'll be interesting to see if they're successful.
You said Google and who?
Apple?
That could be a whole panel discussion. Go ahead.
I mean, the giant iPad discussion, right?
I think the thing that I'm looking forward to seeing is whether we end up with interfaces to allow second screen devices to plug in, and also whether we actually standardize those across all the cable operators, or whether you have to have the Comcast interface and the Time Warner interface. So there's another job for cable labs, I think.
That does. All right, excellent thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, please give our panel a warm round of applause. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your afternoon. Thanks, bye.